Now, second part, I look at the watch. We have a twofold origin of French social model, which explains lots of contradictions and also lots of the finance problems. One origin is public assistance in the traditional sense, I give to poor people. It dates back to the French Revolution and to the 19th century, when in the French Revolution you had to build up the nation. Equality and solidarity was the idea. And in the 19th century, with industrialization, you had to prevent social violence and social disorder, so you had to sort of put something in. Social insurance was a second origin, the Bismarckian idea, which you have also realized in Japan. That was to support industry. And in the 45, after the Second World War, was added something like we have to reconciliate society, because the French society was very divided between those who sort of collaborated with the German occupiers and those who fought against it, and you had to bring it together. So the normative dimensions you get out of this mixture is a refusal of stigmatization. The dignity of the person is very important, and that dates back to as a moral principle, and it goes through the laws and through all the social security system. It dates back to the French Revolution. And then rights, of course, are very important, because the person you have to give help in a dignified manner. And that means that you should not expect the people you have to give anything back. And that it has to be a right. If I am entitled to get something, I don't need to get anything back. So that it is the opposite understanding from what the Americans understand by welfare. If I talk about welfare state to the Americans, they understand public assistance. They don't understand the idea about social rights. And France is, I think, probably the country where this is the most integrated in the mental ideas of every citizen, even of conservative people. So we have normative and legal principles. In the Constitution after the Revolution, it was written, public assistance is a sacred duty. That's something holy. Society owes assistance to unhappy citizens in providing work to those who can work, and the means of existence to those who can't. That's written 200 years ago after the. Of course, it was not realized in those days. It was realized much later under the Third Republic and the Fourth and the Fifth. So the Constitution of 46, and then the same in the Constitution, the present one of 68, says a step more. The nation grants to the individual and to the family the conditions to their development, not only to existence, their development. She grants the nation to all, in particular the child, the mother, and the old worker. So we have the big points of French social policy: child, family, and old workers. No question about young people here. Protection, material security, rest time, and leisure. Each person, etc., that has the right to obtain from the collectivity suitable, decent, and respectable means of existence. Now, this is my translation. It's a little bit short. It's not an official one, but the sense is this. The suitable, decent, and respectable has one word in French, and it's there are two words, suitable and then respectable, decent. Anyway, the idea is it has to be something dignified. So there have been a lot of philosophical debates on how to implement such principles. The idea was in 45, a beverage model, or a big national service where everything is grouped together and everybody gets the same thing. But they couldn't put it into work. They had previous institutions which were Bismarck-like, and especially these mutualized health insurances and retirement insurances. So they opted for principles which come from these philosophical backgrounds and fit into a beverage model. But they took as a technique the organization of a Bismarckian model, a compromise. The result is they produced, until now, universalism. That means non-distributive benefits via a Bismarckian system, which is based on contribution, only contributive system. So, and this explains, in my opinion, the lasting controversies which always come back, and there's never consensus about reforms, that the debates are about, all these philosophical debates about universalism, in reality are about the question, who should finance? Should it be on work, or should it be on companies, or should it be on general taxes? And the legitimacy of decision making. Who is a legitimate instance to make decisions? Is it the trade unions and the employers, or is it the state, or is it the administration? And most people would say, well, the state, because it's elected, but the state is also the administration, institutional dependencies, and so on. So reforms always provoke huge contest and protest, because everybody wants to define the Republican values, liberty, equity, and equality, and solidarity. These inform the general principles, and there are very active actors behind who go into the street, organize huge protests. These are the mutualist societies, the teachers' union, and the teachers in the schools, public service trade unions, and other trade unions, and the whole left. So there's a potential of a potential actor group, big one, to prevent all sorts of reforms on economic reasons. And the question is, as we have somehow lost the idea of who is the legitimate decider on these issues, because we are between Bismarck and Beveridge and the state regulating everything. Finally, now, since a few years, public opinion is very closely monitored to see what would be acceptable, what we could do. We need to do something, but what could we do? We listen to public opinion. And I'll show you a picture. That's the end of the second part. The questions were number 1 here and number 2, blue and green. The social security increases public debts. People were told this. It is in this way that they hinder overcoming the crisis. So it's bad for us because we can't overcome the 2006 crisis. Sorry, there's an English mistake here. So do you agree or not with this statement? And the second statement is the social security limits the impact of economic crisis in France, so it's a good thing. And the other one is it hinders us to overcome the crisis. Now, opinion in 2009, just after the crisis, people supported majority that social security should be even more developed because it softens the impact of crisis. And only 45 said maybe it gives us too much public debt and it will make things more difficult. Now, look how it evolved in 5 years. Now the majority thinks that there's too much public debt and we should worry about this and maybe we should cut a little bit back a few benefits. And those who think that all these benefits are really wonderful and a good thing for the country, they become slightly minority, but they're still sort of divided half-half, and you cannot make a policy with these half-half. Okay. Now the whole thing means people are rethinking now very slowly about what universalism means, and they start thinking slowly that it should be reserved for only people who contribute, and we should anything that's not contributive should be really targeted to very poor people. We should not give child allowances to people who earn a lot of money. But for health, it's a different matter. But public opinion remains favorable in general to universalism, with a few, support is eroding. These were the figures I told you. But nearly 70% still prefers total universal access to the health insurance for all without any distinction. So health is something different.